Hello and welcome to the latest in our series of GSA Snapshot webinars. During these 30-minute sessions, we dig into different topics of interest to the global mobile ecosystem, looking at different areas within GSA's research, 4G and 5G networks, technologies, spectrum and devices globally. In today's snapshot, the team are going to dig into the latest data on the deployment of IoT technologies. This comes ahead of a full report which will be published on the GSA website next week, so you really are getting an early look at the very latest data. First, a little bit of housekeeping. We're joined by Simon Bryant and Richard Webb from the GSA research team, who will present the latest data and take your questions at the end, and by Joe Barrett, President of GSA. To ask any questions, please use the Q&A function on the sidebar. Ask them as we go through the data and the insights. We'll collate them and the team will address as many as possible at the end of the session. You will receive a recording to the full session immediately after the event. You can download the presentation at any point during the event as well by moving your mouse over the slides and clicking on the little download icon on the top of the screen. As I say, the report that backs up this webinar will be published on the GSA website next week, and we'll share links to that in the weekly newsletter. So to get things started, I'll first hand over to Joe to kick things off.
Thank you, Richard. So this is just a quick intro for anybody who doesn't know GSA. So we've been representing the global mobile ecosystem since 1998. We have an excellent and large executive board of all the major players, and an extensive research program, which is what you're listening to today as part of that, and a research team that is really looking at what is happening out there in the industry today. So we are promoting the 3GPP technology roadmap and tracking what's actually happening in the industry and reporting on that. We have a large spectrum group, regionally based. We have a standards group that's also looking into 6G, and focus forums and groups, including the Fixed Wireless Access Forum, a private mobile network group, which is gaining traction. And many companies subscribe as associates if they don't want to be members or can't be members of GSA, to get access to the data behind our reports, many of which are free, but the real data you can subscribe to get access to a vast amount of industry data. So with that, I'll hand over to Richard Webb, who can take us through the IoT data.
Thank you very much indeed, Joe. So just as a reminder, the presentation that we're talking through today is based on the latest IoT report from the GSA, and that's soon going to be available on the GSA website. That includes announcements and data up to the end of August this year. As on screen you'll see there, all data is sourced from public information collected from a large number of operators worldwide, and all the data in the report covers only cellular technology. So we're specifically focusing this on narrowband IoT and LTE-M. So we're not including those non-cellular technologies that are also part of overall IoT deployments. So we're not including LoRaWAN, for example, or Sigfox or Wi-Fi, just to clarify. So the number of live IoT networks is where we're going to start. So we've seen the number of deployed or launch networks continue to grow. So the overall proliferation of IoT is continuing. The GSA's identified 253 LTE-M, and NB-IoT solutions being used. And that's from 143 operators across 66 countries so far that have deployed at least one of those technologies. But of that group, 45 have opted for both NB-IoT and LTE-M. 28 of those countries do not have NB-IoT networks only, but we're not actually seeing any country with only LTE-M at the moment. So overall, the market is continuing to grow. look specifically at NB-IoT. Now, this is the narrowband Internet of Things. It's a low power, wide area network technology. It's part of the standards group developed by 3GPP for cellular network devices and services. And this technology specifically focuses on indoor coverage with the design aim of being low cost, long battery life, and yielding high connection density. We're seeing a number of distinct operators investing in the technology continuing to rise. The rate has slowed a little bit as the market approaches some degree of saturation, though there is still room for further growth in terms of new rollouts from operators worldwide. In total, we've seen 128 operators across 65 countries having deployed or having launched narrowband IoT networks. But we've also seen an additional 23 piloting or planning to deploy NB-IoT networks, and a further 19 are also evaluating or testing narrowband IoT. So that's where we think that continued growth is going to come from, even though the actual rate of adoption is slowing as the total market reaches more of a critical mass. With regards to LTE-M, this is a shortened acronym for LTE-MTC, long-term evolution machine type communications. This is another low power wide area network radio communication technology standard developed by 3GPP for machine to machine and IoT applications. It's characterized by a comparatively higher data rate. Yield is slightly higher than for narrowband IoT, as well as its support for more seamless mobility and voice over the internet support as well, or voice over the network support, I should say. So it's often chosen to support IoT applications that require more frequent communication messaging because it's got no duty cycle limitations operating on the licensed spectrum. So some of the most widely adopted applications for LTE-M are, for example, low density sensors, because LTE-M removes the need to connect to Wi-Fi and the low power requirement kind of extends the battery life of sensors. We're also seeing it deployed for automated meter reading. It's got a typically cheaper chipset ecosystem, so that's driving the popularity for meter reading type applications that are scaling up based on LTE-M. So it's good for that type of application. We're also seeing it deployed for asset tracking, again, partly due to the extended battery life because of its low power requirements. So asset trackers, we're seeing deployed over LTE-M across a wide range of assets, vehicles, containers, trailers, even livestock applications as well. So a growing base of usage cases for LTE-M, and that growth is continuing. So far, the GSA has identified 80 operators in 44 countries that are actively investing in LTE-M. And of these, 60 across 38 countries have deployed commercially, with 11 more deploying or planning to deploy or at the pilot stage for networks, and a further 9 actually actively now trialing and testing. So we should see a continued growth in this segment of the market by the next time we report in. A quick look now at the ecosystem of low power wide area network devices that's based on those on those 3GPP standards. The ecosystem itself is growing fast. We're seeing form factors including modules, asset trackers, routers, data loggers, small cells, smart home devices, smartwatches, USB modems, onboard vehicle units as well, and others besides. Currently, the GSA has identified over 1,400 devices supporting either Cat NB1 or NB2 or Cat M1 devices within the ecosystem. And that full list of what is tracked is currently available to all GSA subscribers within the Gambod database. So do take a look at that if you're interested in a little bit more granularity of what we're including. In total, though, 551 devices have been released so far supporting Cat NB1, including all the known variants, and that's coming from a vendor set of over 111 solution providers, and that's up quite significantly from 485, which it was when we reported in around a year ago. Just to give you an example of how that ecosystem continues to swell. 166 devices have been released so far supporting Cat NB2, and that's coming from a total of 36 vendors. So that 166, again, up quite significantly from 119 that we'd identified when reporting in this time a year ago. With regards to category M1, a total of 707 devices have been released, including all the known variants, and that's up from a total of 571 models that were reported in September 2022. So again, strong growth in that part of the ecosystem, and that's from a total body of solution providers of 143 vendors. So again, more participants joining into that particular market segment as well. And just to follow up on that regarding the chipsets that are supporting those different categories, as of our report in August, we'd identified 31 chipsets supporting narrowband IoT and LTE-M technologies. Of those, 28 support category NB1, which is up from 17 previously, and the same number supporting Cat NB2, again from 17 a year or so ago. A little fewer for Cat M1, supported by 12 chipsets from 7 suppliers. So that's a more modest part of the market, but still potential to grow. So a little look now at kind of IoT and machine-to-machine partnerships, still very much in their infancy, I would say. But we do think, whilst the numbers are currently quite low, there is some, market impetus to suggest there may be more coming. So as of April this year, there was a total of 7 partnerships, either having launched or having been announced in the planning phase prior to service launch across 6 different countries, which were Brazil, Spain, the UK, Germany, Japan, and the US. And we can certainly see that more of a pattern is emerging, whereby countries with large manufacturing or mining or agricultural and distribution industries are seeing those partnerships for IoT and machine-to-machine develop, just due to the asset tracking and control capabilities of those 3GPP IoT standards. So, where there's large distances involved, they're particularly strong in terms of supporting those application types. Potential for low latency support as well, highly reliable. So for those kind of use cases that require that reliability, such as asset tracking, there is an increased potential, not just for the technology, but for partnerships with different players in the ecosystem to develop those use cases and technology support even further. So, again, those countries with manufacturing, mining, distribution, we're likely to see more partnerships coming. But of the 7 that are currently being tracked, 6 are currently evaluating or testing or trialing. Examples include TIM in Brazil, partnering with AST Space Mobile, Telefonica and Sateliot in Spain, and also Vodafone and BT partnering with Inmarsat and SES respectively, both of those being in the UK. But so far, only the United States has seen a launched service, this being AT&T Mobility, partnering with Globecom back in April 2016, quite a long time ago, and that was really to provide a basis for a global solution for asset tracking capabilities. So far, that still is the only partnership that we're aware of that is currently live. But of those 7 that we're tracking, 5 were announced in 2022 to 2023. So definitely the rate at which these partnerships are forming is accelerating, and that suggests the market is also accelerating. So we do feel that there's the potential, certainly within the market scale at this point, for more potential partnerships to be announced. Okay, thank you very much for that. We do have time for questions. I know it's a fairly short set of data, but we would be happy to take any questions arising if there are any.
Yes,
Okay.
we have a few. Hello there, this is Simon Bryant. So I work with Richard in the GSA research team. So we've got a few questions here, Richard. One is, do you have any sense of expectations for 5G based IoT, and does GSA track it at all?
Certainly, it's an interesting market. Yes, I mean, part of the DNA of some of the releases, certainly that are coming to the market, suggests that the intention is to drive impetus in IoT. For example, release 18, I think that is coming next year. Just might need to check that again. I do lose track of which release is currently coming when. But that which has been dubbed 5G Advanced has a number of capabilities within that release, but one of them is something called reduced capability. So I think baked into that is again that lower power requirement, because that has been one of the pushbacks to some of the releases of 5G to date, that it's too power intensive and perhaps a little bit too bandwidth hungry or spectrum hungry, I guess. But 5G Advanced has this what's called RedCap, reduced capability, that is really aimed at driving greater uptake of IoT and connectivity to IoT devices over 5G. Now, 5G isn't necessarily as widely deployed as 4G, so referencing the comment I was making a little while back about some of those partnerships and those countries where industries were, at large scale, large country size, large geographies, where that coverage could be important. Perhaps it would still be a little bit too early for 5G because that coverage isn't particularly strong yet. But 5G Advanced is certainly designed to be more conducive to support IoT over 5G. It may well be that there are industrial settings where that could make more sense over 5G. Certainly use cases that require 5G type higher bandwidth or lower latency could take advantage of 5G. And that might be on a local scale, where that scale requirement that only really LTE can support at the moment isn't so prevalent. So that might be, for example, in a private mobile network. So a much more localized geography. So we might see 5G private mobile networks, the beginnings of RedCap based 5G Advanced adoption for IoT devices, for example. But still very, very early days. The release isn't really even out yet. So then there'll be some time for the ecosystem to catch up. So yes, that's still a little way off, but certainly we do see 5G adoption of IoT coming. It's been very muted so far in the releases of 5G that we've had in the market so far.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Richard. Great response. So there's quite a few questions coming in now. I'm not sure we'll have time for all of them, but let me just rattle through a few. There's a few questions around access to the data, and all the data that we're presenting is available in the Gambod platform that was mentioned by Joe and Richard earlier. So get in touch if you need to access that detail. Also, the presentation slides you'll receive, and the recording, I should say, after this session. Another question which I can answer is, it says, I see in the LTE-M map that China is finally deploying the technology. Can you please add more details? I can confirm that in our data, China Unicom and China Telecom are both deploying LTE-M.
Okay.
Another question that I'm not sure if any questions we can't answer today, we'll follow up with. But Richard, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on what is the status and momentum of RedCap?
Yeah, well, as I said, RedCap, which stands for reduced capability, is part of 3GPP 5G release 18. As I believe I'm right in saying is still not scheduled to be fully available until next year. But yes, RedCap is, as I said in the last question, specifically designed to really drive the support for IoT over 5G networks. But again, still a while before we have an ecosystem that will make that meaningful in terms of commercial deployments. But yeah, we could see some trialing going on, pretty soon after the standard is out.
Great. Okay. Another question here is: are wearables like the Apple Watch considered Cat-M devices? Do they eat from the same resource pool as mobile broadband traffic? Do you know that?
I don't know off the top of my head. No, I don't know. I'm inclined to say yes, but I'm reluctant to say that definitively without checking that. So I can do that, and we can certainly respond.
No, that's no problem.
Did see a question coming in. I'm just scrolling through regarding 3GPP release of narrowband IoT and whether that's widely deployed by network operators, and whether that's still release 13 or 14 or already upgraded to release 15, 16. The short answer is it's not really definitively one or the other. There's still a mix. There's still some operators that are utilizing narrowband IoT based on release 13 and 14, and there are actually quite a number that have upgraded to release 15, 16, but it's still a little bit fragmented in answer to that.
Great. Another question, not sure if you know the answer, Richard, but it says there are some speculations on the fact that MNOs are not planning to support LTE-M and NB-IoT on 5G network, but rather keep them alive on 4G. I guess that's kind of answered the question maybe that you've already answered.
Yes, I mean, I can comment again, not definitively, because it's not something I have explored in a great deal of specific detail with operators. But yes, I have heard exactly that support for LTE-M and indeed in some cases also NB-IoT is going to be on 4G rather than necessarily over the 5G network, and that 5G is going to be, certainly initially with regards to the IoT market, very much specific to customer-driven use cases. So it tends to be coming into the operator from enterprise engagements rather than them necessarily rolling out 5G based IoT in a kind of mainstream sense, if you like, but doing it somewhat more reactively. But again, I'm really only reflecting anecdotally some conversations and some insights that have been shared with me from a few operators. So please don't take that necessarily as indicative of the whole market. But yes, I have very much heard that LTE-M working very well over LTE networks, of course, and that's where it is quite likely to stay. There isn't really a driving need to change. So yeah, good question, but I wish I could be a little bit more granular in my answer, but certainly yes, I would agree with the statement that's in the question. Okay,
wonderful. Maybe one more question, and I don't know if you've seen any, Richard, that you think, well, you're comfortable asking. One is about, do you expect to see any roaming agreement between NB and LTE-M?
It's not something I've investigated, to be perfectly honest. It does make sense. I think we'll see these technologies, and the vendor community being very active in trying to cross-pollinate, because I think that really kind of reflects the way that enterprises and vertical industries are using these technologies. To them, it's really whatever works best for their application needs, and they, in what I'm hearing, kind of push that back to the service providers and say, well, we'll make it work. So it isn't necessarily a case that they're the customer environment is choosing one technology over another. If it works, that's how they're comfortable with it. It's going to be up to operators to make it work, and one of those mechanisms could well be roaming agreements. So yes, I could see that. Wonderful.
That's great. Thank you very much, Richard, and thanks for the questions you've provided. We will do our best to respond to those over the coming days. So thank you very much. I'll hand back over to Richard White now.
Cheers. Thank you very much. And thank you all for joining us today as well. As the guys said, after the event, you will receive a link to the on-demand recording of the webinar with the slides, and the full report that lies behind all this data, as they will be published on the GSA website next week. In the coming months, we've got lots more events coming up, which are digging into our key reports, the global data and the trends that are all being tracked by the GSA research team. In the next event, we'll look at fixed wireless access and share results and insights from the Fixed Wireless Access Forum's annual CPE vendor survey. Following that, we have another snapshot webinar, similar format to this, where we'll be looking at the global data around 5G experience. For this, we are delighted to share that we'll also be joined by Ian Fogg, VP Analysis at OpenSignal. Then at the end of October, you can actually get old school and go in person, and the GSA will be attending the Network X event in Paris, where the Fixed Wireless Access Forum will be holding a workshop looking at the challenges around monetization and closing the digital divide with fixed wireless access, bringing together a panel of mobile operators, fixed operators, and vendors. Please keep an eye on our events page for more information on these and other events. As for all the other research and activities and upcoming events, again, we will share information on that on our social channels and via the weekly newsletter. You can sign up to the latter via the website, and our social channels you'll see here. We're on Twitter, X, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Finally, on behalf of the GSA team, I'll just say thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you again at the next GSA event. Many thanks.